Good morning, good people. We're at Park Inn by Radisson, and today's show is extra special. Our show today takes us through the lives of three guests. They went through something that was a little difficult, traumatic even, but they were able to rise above and they were able to create something beautiful out of it. We met three guests on three different occasions, and it's such a wonderful, inspiring story. It's the best way to start your morning. Trust me. Now let's dive into the stories. I've got Darren Clark here with me. Welcome to the show, Darren.
Thank you for having me.
Such a pleasure. I'm so curious to hear more about your story. He's the ambassador of the British Dyslexia Association.
Yep.
And that's a conversation that we want to dive into right now.
Absolutely.
And maybe you could start by hearing a little bit about your story, because I know for a while you didn't even know that you were dyslexic. So maybe you could share a bit about that.
So for me, all throughout school, I suppose mostly childhood, I knew there was a certain block, and I didn't know I was dyslexic until probably about 6 years ago, actually.
What?
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey. So I left school with no qualifications.
In school, did you ever sense that something was off?
Yeah,
or
I
you
sensed,
just,
not so much in primary school,
Yeah.
but definitely secondary school.
Yeah.
When the lessons were getting a little bit more tougher, I just didn't get it. You know, the teacher would say over and over and over again, and I would tend to go home from school with a headache and not really understanding what it was. And so I knew there was a bit of a block somewhere, but I didn't know what it was. A lot of the time the teacher would just put me in a separate room with a colouring in book to occupy me rather than put me through lessons, which subsequently meant that I left with no qualifications.
Right. So what were some of the signs that you exhibited early on?
Yeah, I think it was just sort of exhaustion, frustration in the sense that the more I tried to concentrate on something, the more I wouldn't be able to concentrate. I think the signs were if I get quite tired, then the letters on the page would start moving around, which as a young child, it was quite scary, I suppose. It was a bit strange.
Right, so I'm curious to know, like in that moment when you're seeing the letters moving around, did you share with anyone?
No, I didn't, and I suppose because I didn't really know what was going on. You know, I would go home from school with, like I said, with headaches and frustration and not really understanding why I didn't get it, which made schooling, quite tricky. I attended every day, but there was never really the same thing. The same thing happened every single day. I would try, not really get it. The teachers wouldn't understand it.
Yeah.
So subsequently, it was quite tricky.
So how did that affect your relationship with school, with learning, and also moving out of your school and continuing into the workspace?
Yeah. So like I said, school I found really difficult. I would just the frustration of walking into a classroom, not knowing that you're going to be succeeding in that lesson, being put in a separate room and given a colouring in book to do. So I was quite happy to leave school.
Right.
But when I left school, leaving school with no qualifications is quite tricky to get any job.
Right.
So subsequently, I got my first job, 12 hours a week in a supermarket pushing trolleys.
Wow. Right.
Which was after 17 application forms that I had to fill in, and you kept getting rejected because you had no qualifications, even for any job. You would need certain qualifications, but I kept getting rejected.
Yeah.
And luckily enough, I managed to get my 17th application, which was a 12-hour a week trolley job.
And I can only imagine the kind of blow it sort of takes on your confidence and just feeling that you can do it, and at least especially when it's not diagnosed and you don't understand what it is. So tell me about the time that you then 6 years ago realized what it is that
I then fell in love with retail because it was more hands-on rather than book studying, and managed to progress my career in different retailers and got to a very sort of senior level within the corporate industry. But I got to a level where I couldn't grow anymore. For me, it's all about learning. So I wake up like a sponge every day, trying to absorb something. So I left that and started my own business. Which was subsequently a cleaning round. We're the Spotless Group.
Spotless Group.
And then we've got Spotless Domestic Cleaning, Spotless Commercial Cleaning. So we've kept everything simple. I love simple. But there was always a block. But the diagnosis of dyslexia was one afternoon I was watching a television program, and there was a lady that ran a floristry business, and she was being interviewed by the TV channel, and she was mentioning signs about her dyslexia, and she was saying she was more creative, and that's why she set up her own business. And she used to find school frustrating with the letters moving around and going home with headaches. And it was just like a little click in my head, and I was thinking, goodness, I know, that's similar. So then I started Googling dyslexia, researching it, and then I went in and got tested.
Wow.
But once I got tested, I didn't. It was almost like, I get
Right.
it, and then.
Yeah,
Move on then.
I was actually going to ask you, what was that like when you finally found out what it was?
It was a great relief in one aspect, but the other side, I don't like to ponder on the past and stuff. But I was thinking, if I'd been diagnosed, that I probably would have had more support, but then I probably wouldn't have been had that fight in me as much and wanted to progress. So so I'm happy it's been diagnosed, so I can now spread the word about it. But I cherish the stuff that I did on my own without being diagnosed as well, if that makes sense.
And then, of course, you then became the ambassador for BDA. Can you share what that role means?
Yes.
And some of the things that you have on your docket now that you're the ambassador.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this thing and meeting yourself as well all came from a couple of months ago. So I've spoken to over 50,000 students over the past 7 years in schools on entrepreneurship, business, and now dyslexia, from schools, colleges, youth projects, and I thought I wanted to take the message further afield. So I sat there one evening and put together a bit of a profile and an email campaign, so to speak, and emailed 76 different organisations all the way across the world.
Okay.
And Phyllis from Kenya, delightful, came back and invited me to the country to speak at this event. But one of the other things as well is the British Dyslexia Association came back and said, we'd love you to get involved with conferences, and I was invited to the House of Lords to sit in with one of their meetings.
Oh, wow.
So that was fantastic. And then I met with Helen, the CEO. We sat down and she said, look, how do you want to help this organisation? And I said, well, I want to be able to share the amazing things that you're doing. Right. So we put together a project, and she said we'd love to have you as an ambassador for us, so you can help share the great word.
Yeah, right. And now that you know all that you know, right, about dyslexia, what are some of the things or ways that parents can really help support their children, or even be able to pick this out in their children before they even know what's happening with themselves?
Absolutely, and dyslexia in the UK, I mean, there's still so much work they need to be doing in schools and workplaces as well. But I think it's just understanding that, from a parent's point of view with the child, is that trying to understand it, if they can get diagnosed, it'd be fantastic early on. Yeah. But understanding that it's not a learning difficulty in that sense. It's just something that we learn differently. So for me, I'm more visual than I am, writing things down. So if they've got a chosen task to do, they will get there. It's just a case of they may have to go around the houses to get there. So it's just understanding how that person, you can get the best out of that person. And some of the barriers, and work when you can work. I'm a morning person, so I'm up really early and I'm answering emails and working. But if I was to sit down on my laptop at 8 o'clock at night, it would take me nearly an hour to send an email with just a few words. Right. And I would running a business, you'd fight against that. Right. So I've got to do this email, I've got to do this email. But now I just shut the laptop down, go for a walk, re-energize, and then come back and tackle it.
So it's not about trying to fit them into this mold and sort of force them into this structured way of learning, but understanding how to sort of work with them.
And I think that's difficult because if you look at the school system, especially in the UK, you have the hours between 9 and 3, and you're told you go in for an hour and you learn English, you go in for another hour you learn maths, and sometimes with dyslexia it doesn't work that way. You can't just switch from one subject to another subject to another subject, and that's why they find it a little bit difficult.
Right. So then how can educators play a role in making sure that that they are patient but also impactful when it comes to teaching someone with dyslexia? How do they do that?
It's incredibly difficult. I mean, I think teaching is a fantastic thing to do, but again, really difficult. If you think you have a classroom of, say, 20 students, and you have a percentage of people that get it, you'll put the task out and they'll get it, and then then you have another percentage of people that need a little bit of support. But then if you throw a child in there with dyslexia, it throws the whole thing out. So it's more a case of supporting the teachers with understanding how to deal with someone with dyslexia, giving them more of, say, visual tasks, or just having that conversation and finding, what points do they find it overwhelming. And that's one of the things that I found. If I'm doing lots of different things at once, I find it so overwhelming that I would rather just and push it back. Right. So I think there needs to be more education in schools to help teachers. Right. With the teaching side of it, definitely.
Yeah, I hear you. Any last words as we wrap up? Anything that you'd like to share with someone who either has dyslexia, and you never know, there could be someone who's watching and for them it clicks, like, oh gosh, how he's described in his childhood is exactly how I grew up. And so is there anything that you'd want to share?
I think, so school for me didn't work in that sense. I didn't, like I said, I didn't leave with any qualifications. However, that didn't stop me becoming into a senior manager role within a corporation and then setting up my own several businesses as well. So I think it's find something that you're passionate about, find something that you can do with ease, but share your story and talk to people and find out what those barriers are, and trust me, they're not as big. Keep things very, very simple, and you'll really succeed. Proven.
Look at you. Look at Darren, exactly. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your time in Kenya. It's Darren's first time in Kenya, by the way.
It is, yes.
I know you've been to a couple of places, Elephant Sanctuary, Giraffe Center.
Yes.
You get to enjoy the country a little bit more.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll definitely be back. It's been, I've had a fantastic welcome, so thank you so much.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Thank you, Darren. We've got to take a break, but we'll be back in a moment.